All right, why don't we start? You're going to,
We're recording now.
very good. Now, we should probably introduce ourselves.
Okay.
David?
I'm David Yale. I'm the author of a novel called Becoming Gigi. And back in the 1970s, I was director of a recreation center in North Minneapolis.
Glenn, want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Glenn Grinnage, Executive Director for Sutton Boulevard Business Improvement District and Community Advocate, Community Organizer.
I'm Tom Pope. I'm a social activist, and my activism takes me into novel writing. This topic today, actually, I think, comes about with an age-old idea that I have that fiction actually tells the story of real life. There's a natural connection because all of the forces in fiction are the same forces that face us in reality. So the characters we write are facing the same challenges in our life. For this topic, David and I are both writing about co-ops or some idea of a community spirit that is helping the community. David, you want to explain a little bit about how this is happening in your novel?
Sure. I did this gig at the recreation center in North Minneapolis in my late 20s. And I wasn't as smart then as I am now, so I didn't do all the things in the book. But I started thinking in retrospect, now that I'm in my 70s, what could I have done? And I thought, and I came up with a whole bunch of things. So this trilogy has 3 books in it, and the first book is empowering, the second book is rebelling, and the third book is implementing. In the first book, a new park director shows up at Shingle Creek Park. And there were a bunch of teenagers who were kind of dispirited. They don't have any hope. They don't have any plans. It's difficult for them to get jobs. And Joe, the new park director, says the key thing: what do you want to see here? And they have ideas. They're small ideas. We want some basketball. We want a volleyball. We want a table and chairs. We want craft supplies. We'd like to have cross-country running. And Joe says, okay, we can do that, and helps empower them in several ways. First of all, with small victories. Basketballs, craft supplies, a table and chairs, that's easy. We can do that. We'll get that. And he gets that. But then he starts to get to know the individual teams and finds that they have issues. And so he starts working with them on their issues, especially Jill, who is a very, very bright young woman and becomes a leader. He also empowers them by telling them, let's set up a team council, and you're going to run it, and you're going to run programs here. Nothing's been happening here. We're going to make things happen together. He knits the group together over time. He helps them learn how to be better friends and colleagues to each other. And he helps them get resources. He doesn't do it. He shows them, this is how you do it. So the first thing is they get a grant for a women's self-defense class because it's a particularly violent neighborhood for women. He helps you get a grant for a full-time counselor, which becomes key in the second book. And he helps each of them individually do what they need to do. So Paul, for example, would like to set up a traveling handyman van as a business. And Joe gives him advice and gets him running and helps him set it up. Jill doesn't know this, but she has a world-class voice. And Joe gets her vocal lessons. So little by little, the group becomes more empowered. But then one day, Joe and Jill leave town. Not suddenly, it's planned. And Paul has to take over. He's an idealist, a thinker, an organizer, and one of the very first things he does is to set up a program to help families in need, where somebody in the family has died and the family is hanging on by their fingernails, and he gets a volunteer program going to help them by cooking dinner twice a week. He also shares his personal vision. This park has a lot of big empty fields that nobody really uses, nobody really likes. They're kind of ugly. They're cut real short twice a week by a mower. And Paul has a vision that these could be orchards with fruit trees and nut trees and blueberry bushes, and that there would be enough for everybody in the community. But it's only a vision so far, but he talks about it. He talks about it, tells a story about it. People start talking about it.
Before you go on, I think we should take some turns adding to what David has said. In my novel, I have set before World War I the idea of how co-ops can actually work against the big banking corporations. Local farmers are starving in Germany, and the landowners are making a lot of money. The banks are making a lot of money. The rail companies are making a lot of money. My character, Huey, named after Huey Newton, has developed a co-op type of independence, self-sustaining model where they don't need to go to the bank for funds. They pool their resources. The community starts to thrive. When Huey goes to Russia, he develops the same system in Russia. At that time, Russia had a commune system. It was misnamed totally. The commune was slated to give land to people in the town. However, it was controlled by a small elite group of people in the town. Huey finds a way of bringing the town people together. They take over the co-op, the commune, and they replicate the same process. Now, both David and I are writing about these topics. Glenn, can these topics pertain to the real world around us?
Well, absolutely. I think that one of the opportunities is to be able to capture the local economic picture for that particular community. And so the function of the co-op is really to empower the members of the community economically. So for me, the co-op is really creating an economic engine that's localized to that particular community, that then has the members of the community either trade commerce or are able to sell goods and services to the people outside of that particular community, which again then brings money back into the community. So these are all examples of local economic development.
Can I jump back in, Tom?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, so getting back to Paul, he asked, what do you want here? And one of the things that people say is, we want to have our own small businesses. We'd like some of them to be community owned. We don't have the resources to do that. We would like to get the resources. And the other big thing that comes up is that at the edge of this community, there is a rail yard where a lot of the men work. And there have been deaths and injuries in that rail yard, particularly recently. When 2 more men are killed in the rail yards and 6 young men are killed in Vietnam, remember this is in the 70s, Paul and his allies reach out to the railroad unions And the park board gets word of this, and they fire Paul and Karen. Well, the community just erupts in fury. There are huge protests. The unions go on strike. The unions reach out to the Teamsters Union, which shuts down the entire city because there's no rail traffic, there's no truck traffic going anywhere in that town right now. The strike is won, and the community demands and gets development funds. So those fields are planted with orchards. There are community-owned stores and a medical clinic set up. There are 2 community-owned ethnic restaurants, a community-owned concert hall, and a working-class sculpture garden developed by the community. So now the community finally in Book 3 has the opportunity to do this, and they lift themselves up by the bootstraps.
So let me ask a very basic question concerning a poor area. If we have a lot of people who are barely making any income, how can they pull any type of resource that can give them more strength, more wealth, without dealing with a terrible bank that is going to create foreclosures or extort money from them?
Well, you know, one of the probably most useful things is a credit union. So a credit union is a way of operating, much like the local banks used to do back not too long ago, where you knew the bank president, you were a resident, you had your mortgage there with that local bank, and that local bank was much more in relationship with you than the bigger banks, because they had to protect their interests, and your interests were their interests. So it's a mutual partnership inside of the economic lending model. Now, you also have, in modern day, you've got community banks and CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions, which again, a CDFI gets money from the Federal Reserve at a discount with the guideline that money gets delivered to local people. So that's a way of accessing capital, cheaper capital than you would normally, that's available to that local community. And the community bank sort of does along the same lines. It's for the community and is specific lending at a discount for local businesses and access to capital.
Now, you mentioned credit union, and I have credit unions as part of UE's plan. But the problem that I wanted to really bring out, and I'm wondering if this makes sense, the credit union can help a local person who hardly has money with dealing with a mortgage better than a traditional bank.
Right.
But if the whole neighborhood and community has very little money, how does that credit union help them?
Well, again, you begin to look at ways of collective bargaining. You look at the barter system. There was one which I thought was very interesting. It was called the Hull coin. And what it was kind of takeoff on the Bitcoin, except that it was for small service businesses, that they could give this particular coin to their employees or their volunteers with the intention of that only being used in the community. So you begin to generate income inside of that community. Of course, once you raise the income level of the community, now you've got a better opportunity to now deal with a credit union. So there are ways of building up the economic infrastructure within that community so that a credit union or a community bank could be an effective means of accessing capital and financing community initiatives. In fact, there's also what seems to be pretty available at this point in time is also a real estate investment trust, which is a way of the community, a collective community, investing in buying a building and maintaining that particular building. So maybe that building gets bought by the members who can support it, and it's like a mutual fund, so they can come in and out very easily. And now you put in an incubator, a business incubator into that, so that you continue to develop small businesses in the community to get bigger and create capacity.
Now, David, I know you positioned in book 2 a lot of interactions where people were helping other people within the community. Could you describe some of that?
Well, the biggest one is that Paul finds out that in one family where the husband was killed in the Humboldt Yards, there are 4 young children. The oldest of them is 9 years old. She is after school staying home, taking care of the kids so her mother can go out to work. He wants her to have a chance to be a kid. So he gets volunteers together to cook. He himself makes Swedish tomato soup. They come, they cook a meal twice a week. This kid can then go out and play with her friends. They do childcare. They do cleaning of the house. They even have some 9-year-olds who come and help clean the house. This takes the pressure off that family. There's another family where the father was killed in a rail accident a number of years before. And the 17-year-old in the family has to keep that family together because his mother is working as a full-time live-in maid for a rich family in the south part of the city. They do the same for him. So that is one of the things that they do. It's their first big program. But people start feeling differently about each other as this happens. And the word goes around, did you hear what Paul did? He actually is making tomato soup for this family. And he has other people making, other things so they get a full meal. And the wife of the family has some relief, and the oldest daughter in the family has some relief. But I also wanted to speak to something that Glenn was saying. I think that all of those are useful tools, but I think that at a certain point in history, certain points in history, there are times when the ruling class gets scared and they're worried and they're willing to throw money at the situation. This happened in the 70s. It looks to me like the situation in Minneapolis may be engendering that again right now. And you can get money out of corporations, out of city government, out of state government when that happens. You have to organize to do it, but you can do it.
Now, I'd like to take another look at a problem that is somewhat connected to what David was talking about. We deal with the homeless in many conversations. Now, can we use David's model where someone in the community provides a home, a temporary home for someone, in exchange for, we could find out the homeless person maybe has a skill of working with carpentry.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Or cooking or something like that. So now the homeless person translates a skill in exchange for living in a room someplace. We would need to broaden our concept for this so that this would be part of the approach, but we would also be faced with that NIMBY problem, not in my neighborhood. We don't want someone like this in our neighborhood. How do we get by that kind of an obstacle?
Well, I think the when you look at creating an opportunity for people to develop or to utilize their skill, um, there's something about you now becoming functional. You're now providing a service. You feel better about yourself. You then all of those things now come into play, and you actually do have a home. You do have a place that so that you're not sleeping on the street or in a shelter. So I think that uplifts the person um, going forward. Now, we've talked before, and one of the things also is that we've talked about the homeless situation. In fact, I had some long discussions at the conference I was at this past weekend. And one of the things is building housing. You know, having housing available for people who are homeless, which stabilizes them, which gives them an opportunity now that they've got a home base to come from, and especially if they've got a skill set or something to now trade or to get either money directly or maybe the call coin kind of situation where you then get monies that you can spend in that particular community. You now have an opportunity to feel good about yourself. You now are able to provide services for someone else, and you're getting compensated, and now you can then go out and buy food or whatever. So you've now, again, cultivated a local economy that now has people be self-sufficient, even if they're just bartering.
I guess to wrap things up, we should see, David, do you have some other thoughts about what we're talking about?
I'm just wondering, Glenn, if you have any thoughts on which is more advantageous, to have small individually owned businesses in a community or to have community owned businesses?
Well, interesting question. I would say, depending on the community, either one could work or both could work side by side. I think there's, a co-op is a great example of a community business. You have the food co-ops, and in order to get the benefit, you volunteer X amount of hours a month or so forth, and so you now are cultivating and getting something at a cheaper price as a collective, because you're buying in bulk. So those opportunities certainly make sense from a community standpoint.
I think it also adds in a number of other ways. Number one, it reinforces the communalism as opposed to the individualism. It creates the harmony within the community. And secondly, it gives the individual volunteers or workers the idea this is ours. It's not someone else's.
Yeah, and it's a great incentive. Now, let's say, for example, you have the food co-op, and maybe you have some other co-ops, but you also may need some specialty items that are not big enough for the entire community, but just that service. So you have an individual that is, I don't know, a shoe repair or a shoe, cobbler. I don't know if they still have those, but somebody with a specialty niche that services, or it would make sense for that person to be a small business inside, right next to the co-op or inside of that community, to provide that service for people who need it, but aren't necessarily going to generate a large number of jobs. So I think the two. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's an and.
Do we have anything else?
I just want to mention that the name of my book is Becoming Gigi, J-I-J-I, and it's on Amazon, and it's a 99-cent ebook.
Awesome.
And my novel is The Violence of Cotton, and you can find that on Amazon.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, it was a great conversation. Thank you for engaging in the fiction and nonfiction worlds of economic development. I think it's been a useful conversation, and I hope the people who are listening to it get something for themselves out of it.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
You know how to